Hey there out there, riders. So after much debate, I started thinking about it. I said that after 1,000 subscriptions, do a face review, but well, now having this Harley Davidson, I'm thinking that that's going to be a giant no. In fact, I think I'll just do the face review now. So I figure that doing a face review now would be a lot easier because a lot of the tutorials in which I've been, stuff in which I've been recording, the mask just gets inside the way, and what's the point of wearing the mask if it's just going to hinder you in the long run? Plus, it's not like I'm going to do anything illegal or anything like that, you know? It's not like I'm going to ride on sidewalks, slap women holding babies or anything like that, or riding illegally. I mean, I got an endorsement. I'm not going to ride on sidewalks, as some of my neighbors do, but yeah. So, this is me. This is Wild. Online community calls me Wild. I go by different names with it, but I just stick with Wild in itself. And Wild Rider seems to work out because I'm riding a motorcycle, so Wild Rider. Not like I'm going to do anything wild on the motorcycle, but regardless. So I guess at this point, I'll continue on to the next video, which I've already got recorded and set up. So, Star Wipe. Hey all, how's it going today? It's Wild Rider. So, guess what came in today on this lovely Friday morning? Brake pads. Yay! Now I can get this part of the bike done, and I can actually stop better. Went and purchased these over on Amazon. I have purchased organic in the past before. I haven't had any problem with them at all. Now, if you've purchased organic, I'd like to hear what your opinion's on it. I had it for my V-Star, had no problems. For my various vehicles, I've had no problems. Except, I think the only problem in which I've had, in which I've actually had to replace them probably about 2 or 3 years later. Let's get started. We're going to do the rear. And the first thing that you want to do when you're doing the rear or doing any type of brake job here is that you're going to want to end up removing the reservoir cap. This goes the same for automobiles as well. You take a look inside there. You don't see a lot inside there. But that'll change later on when we make a frickin' mess. Now, beforehand, one of the things in which I always do is I want to make sure that I have the right equipment to do the job. We got our caliper pin bolt here. The slide pin here. It's got a rubber bushing on there that allows it to be able to slide back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes there might be anti-seize on there, sometimes there might not be. That's okay. Now, unfortunately, the 7/16 didn't work out so much, so now I got to use metric. And I thought this was supposed to be an American-made bike. Alright, so I'm going to loosen this up. And yes, if it does happen, yes, I am cheating a little bit. I did loosen up some of these prior to here and take a look exactly what's going on. So next, we're going to end up removing the other slide pin bolt. That in itself, just to let you know, 9/16 and 14mm are just about interchangeable. There might be a couple of hairs difference, but that's about it. So since my last bike was a metric, I have a lot of tools for metric. Of course, I also have a lot of tools for American. So go ahead and loosen it up. One of the other things in which I did beforehand was I loosened up a small little bolt right here that holds down the brake line prior to going over to the reservoir. Well, brake line to the switch for the reservoir to let you know brake pressure. So, brake pressure. Right. Now to recap, this is a 2009 Harley Davidson Sportster L. Now I'm gonna I went online because my manual hasn't come in yet, which I purchased 40 bucks. All right, there we go. Pulled that out. Yeah. And pulled this back, and there you go. One of the things you want to do is, because you got this on here, and just to save yourself some time having to try to push this back, that you can actually push this in on your disc. And what you're doing is pushing that little piston in that was all the way out. Damn, look how that is. Looks like these are semi-metallic. But you push that all the way in, makes your life a hell of a lot easier. As I work on cars, doing this is one way. You could also grab a C-clamp in order to be able to push it up against, push it back. I recommend using the other brake pad in order to push it back on, though. That's how I do it on cars. Haven't had a single problem. It saves you money on having to buy specialty tools. Alright, now we got this cap here that houses the pin for this. Takes a flathead screwdriver. As I said before, I loosened various things, so went ahead and did that. Cap is loosened, place that on the ground. Now, this happens to be 5mm. What was that? Hex? Yeah, hex. Then you can take that off. And you unscrew the pin out of there. Now, whenever I do a job, I always put anti-seize on here. I'm going to see what the manual recommends. But easily slip them off. And you can see the piston has been pushed all the way back in, which is nice. That's where we have it for that. Now I'm going to post the link inside my in this video in regards to an automotive a manual that I came across. I came across a site that happens to have these PDFs for free. You can actually download them to your computer as well. As for printing, I'm not exactly too sure, but you never know. As I don't have a printer out here in my garage, well, we'll get to that later. But, as you can see, everything's free moving. I don't see anything on here wrong, so I'm going to assume that's okay. You know what they say, once you assume, you're making an ass out of you and me. Alright. We'll put this back in here. Should be no problem. And if you take a look, after I pressed all that in there, look, it came back. All that brake fluid came back right into the reservoir. And I'm going to tell you something. This set of brake pads in which I bought them for about 15 bucks on Amazon. That's not a bad price. Now, there are I feel no grooves inside here. As I said, I feel no grooves inside here at all. Yep, no groove. So I think we'll be pretty good on that. Now, I'm going to have to take a look at the manual, see exactly if I have to run some anti-seize in here, but I don't see it. See, that happened to be the problem. Yep, as I suspected, they do not want you you don't have to put any anti-seize on there. So we'll go ahead and remove this. Got the pads. Put that in. Now the manual says not to put the bolt in, but to use a drill bit. So that way it retains the orientation on there. So that way you can get this to go. Thing is that that really shouldn't matter, at least in my experience on motorcycles and in cars. So we're going to go ahead and slide that in, making sure that slides out. Wiggle that in there a little bit. There we go. And I think that was the reason why that they wanted you to do that, so that way you can make sure that the brake pad goes inside the little slot there. If you feel around properly. Shouldn't have much of an issue. Yep, that lined up just fine. And of course, put that back in. Nice thing about the way that they got these things is that way you can do that. Now, brake pad is actually in its spot, so now we're just going to tighten everything up. Put the pin all the way in there. There are specifications on here, and that is also inside this manual as well. Fortunately, it's inside inch pounds, so I'm going to have to do figure out some conversion here in a bit. Tighten that down. Then we'll move on to the bolt. Lightly. Never do it too firm. That way you can go inside there, and you don't want to use an impact as well. Alright, that is where it's supposed to be. That is nice. Alright. Next will be the specifications. Alrighty, so apparently the bolts, at least from what I've read on that manual, don't have a conversion, but this pin does. In fact, it is required to be at somewhere between 10 and 14 foot-pounds. Actually, it says 131 to 173 inch-pounds, but since all I have is foot-pounds, that should do nicely. And then the cap itself, just get it in there as best as you can. Because I believe it said something about 11 inch-pounds. It's like, yeah, that's not going to convert over to foot-pounds. And I believe hand tightening usually can do about 7 or 8 foot-pounds. All you gotta do is make sure it's snug on there and doesn't come off. Next, there we go. We'll put the cap back on. And like when you're doing automotive, like what I do, you always pump the brakes. So that's what I'm gonna do over on the other side. Oh, I don't wanna forget that little bolt. And that actually took a 1/4 inch. So we will set that back in there. We'll tighten that down. Don't want that to get loose. Don't need a reef on any of this stuff. Pump the brake on this, so that way it's snug up against there. In fact, I'll do that right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Nice and firm. And that's pretty much the rear. next we'll move on to the front. Alright, so what I've done is for the front, as I said before, you got to remove the cap. Now this might end up getting a little bit nasty inside here depending on how much space there is in the front, because if you remove the cap, which is also my fuel gauge, you can see there's quite a bit inside here. So, loosened it up, put that over there. Got to be careful on these type of things because brake fluid can pull the paint off of your vehicle if you let it sit unattended. Alright, so I had a little bit of a problem here. I do not have a 12.10mm socket, which is what they want you to use in order to remove the brake caliper. All I have is a 12-point wrench. So this is going to be a lot of pounding, maybe. Who knows? Alright, so rubber mallet on wrench. Cap. I'll get back to you once I got it loosened up. Alright, so I loosened it up after whacking on it with the rubber mallet for about a minute. Got the bottom one loosened up. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see, I'll just show you. Oops. You can see that it's got some stuff on there. Usually it's a result of connectivity and such. Here they put Loctite on there. I would say it's salt, but only a fool would ride his bike on a salty road. I mean, bikes are nice to have, but not for winter. As you can see, this is coming off. Yep, these pads are bad. So, yeah, you don't want to pound on these things at all. Even though that they are cast aluminum, you want to avoid that as much as possible. Right here, it's probably going to end up being the same thing as on the other bike. A flathead screwdriver inside the slot, take off the cap, and then pull out the pin. This has got dual pistons on here. Flathead screwdriver. Easy peasy. Then, because I still have it left over from the project, it uses the same one. Now, manual said to pull this off while it's on there, which is fine. Not a problem with that. We're gonna have to clean up the pin a little bit. No big deal. I'll just use a wire brush on here, smooth it out, and then we'll be able to put the new brake pads on there. And that you don't need to see. Yeah, this should get cleaned up a little bit. Other one didn't need it. This one does. So, as you can see, these pads, bump kiss. So, put that back in there. C-clamp. And I will put that pin back in there so that way it doesn't come out of the space while I'm using C-clamp on there. You never want to use your new ones. You always want to use your old pads to do this because you're just going to toss them out anyways. And with new pads, you don't want to cause any damage to them. Let's see. Yeah, that's fed inside there enough. And what I'm talking about is that you want to have it close to the middle as possible. This way you don't cause any problems. And as you can see, I used the old brake pad on this side, so that way we don't cause any damage. And then you just turn. And just to be safe, you want to get the other one, since there is 2 of these pistons in here. And then you just press down on that. This way you get the even force. Then, as you can see, both pistons are all the way down there. And it's even, which is the key thing. Now I'll just go ahead and undo this. And I think I'll clean up a little bit inside here as well with the wire brush. Because cleanup work is always a pain in the butt. You always see these guys making it always look all so easy to do the jobs. And you know, it's not all that easy. I laugh half the time. It's like, wow, you really did that. How many times did you have to redo that? How many takes did that take? But yeah, as you can see, they're even. They come out exactly. You push them in using the C-clamp, using the old brake pad. This way you avoid causing any damage on the outside of it, and you don't ruin your caliper. But I will go ahead and clean this up. Since it's cleanup work, you guys don't need to see that. So, we went ahead and cleaned that area out. I would have used a brake cleaner, but I'm afraid that it might cause some damage to these boots and pins. Now these are pretty much sealed up, and they actually contain a grease inside there. Much like what I was talking about for the rear, but this one doesn't actually have it. It's contained inside the boot, in which gets the slide. It causes the slide. We have no issue with the slide, so I think we'll be good. Next, out of package. Out of package. There we go. We will put the brake pads on. We'll put the pads back in, pretty much the same way in which we got them out. This goes in first. Goes up against a small little mini tab. I can't show you that because the camera won't be able to pick that up. Next, slide the pin through. Move the old glove. Then we put the new one, this one in as well. Now the reason why I'm doing it is so that way it sits inside the area right here. You see there's the little tabs on these metals to help guide and keep it from going out. Next, let's slide this in. Guess I should have put the pin on there all the way, because once we get the bracket inside here, tighten this up a little bit so that way it goes inside the other one all the way. And then we can slide this over there. Look at that. And then just get the caliper mounting bolts inside here to hold up. Unfortunately, I do not have any Loctite, but I don't think that's going to matter, as I believe these don't have torque specs, so I pretty much go as hard as possible on here, but not too hard. And since we got that in there, everything's all nice. It takes the same torque specs as the other one. Is, let's see what I say, somewhere between 10 to 14 foot-pounds is what they have on here. So I'll go ahead and do that on there. Once I tighten the bolt down, I will have to get a new set of sockets. And reading this, it looks like the Harleys actually take metric. Makes me wonder, is it made in America or not? Go a little bit extra. Oop, don't want to do that. There we go. That should take care of that. Now, the manual also says that you not to do any hard braking on this, so that way your bike, the pads can get orientated to the there we go. Pull you out, and then put the cap on. Specifications for the front were a lot like for the back, so we'll just do it that. And of course, I'm gonna put the cap. I'm gonna end up pumping the brake on here. Probably have to do it 6 times, so that way the brake will be resting up against the rotor. Alright, so you can see on the cap that the brake fluid came all the way back up. So I pushed the gasket in on the cap. Now, I'm going to end up pumping 2, 3, 4, 5. That's getting harder. 6. There we go. And it went down a bit to go for that. Then all you got to do is wipe up the brake fluid. Screw those. I'll say screws since they're Phillips, but I think they might be both. Yeah, they're screws. I'll screw those down, and then you're good to go. My manual came in today, and I'm glad I went ahead and double checked, because I always like to double check my work. Well, chapter 6 of the Haynes manual tells me exactly what the specifications are for foot-pounds for the caliper mounting bolts. There's a specification for it on 2009. As you can see, it looks like it uses the same specs from 87 to 2009, which is somewhere between 15 to 20 foot-pound for the rear. And for the front, it used 25 to 30 foot-pounds. The calculations in which I did, turns out that I was correct, and I had it down tight, exactly to specs. So we are good on that. It might have been somewhere else on there, but it could have been just a search problem on my part. But it's a good thing I double checked. But now that I got my manual, and I always trust this company, as well as trusting this company. This was just to let you guys know on how to properly do it. I do recommend getting the paper manual, because you never can know when exactly the PDF, the online stuff might be inaccurate. No, that wasn't a gunshot. That was actually a car driving by that backfired.